Hey, Maggie Diaz. This is Dallas Kinney, a voice from our collective Chicago past, a past that has had me searching for you for over 48 years. Now that my quest is over, I want you to know, dear lady, what an honor and privilege it is to greet you from my forest home in the Appalachian Mountains of Georgia. A long way for both of us, Maggie, from our providential meeting in Chicago in 1958. A wise person once told me that if you drop a pebble in a tempestuous sea, the force of that dropped pebble will create concentric circles that will eventually make a very noticeable impact on even the most distant of shores. Maggie, I'm confident that you are oblivious to the fact that over 48 years ago, you unselfishly dropped a quote-unquote pebble of visual understanding on one Dallas Kinney. Your unselfish gift of time and visual insight motivated me to pursue a career in visual communications and journalism that has been both productive and fulfilling beyond my wildest dreams. But let me return to our first meeting some 48 years ago. I was a young thespian. Was I ever that young, Maggie? Fresh out of college, aspiring to be the next great Gene Kelly of musical comedy fame. I had just landed my first gig in Chicago, a one-man show entitled An Evening on Broadway with Dallas Kinney, how presumptuous, at the infamous College of Complexes on Chicago's near North Side. The promoter of the College of Complexes event informed me he needed some promotional photographs, which I didn't have. Panic. Who to go to for these most important photographs? I was aware that acquaintances of mine, the Ramsey Lewis Trio, now legendary in the field of jazz, had recently had some photographs made. I went to Ramsey with my dilemma, and he directed me to a brilliant young photographer, one Maggie Besson. The rest is history, almost. You made my pictures, and I, with major embarrassment, discovered I didn't have enough money to pay you for your excellent work. Rather than have me roughed up by some of your seamier back-alley Chicago acquaintances, you, Maggie, graciously allowed me to work off my debt by assisting you in your studio and beyond. Maggie, you not only taught me how to process film and print pictures, but also allowed me to follow along with you on some of your more notable Chicago assignments. Observing you making pictures at the Lower North Center and the Cabrini Green was a visual education for me that would have been impossible to acquire at any university or photography arts center. Bottom line, being given the chance to observe you up close and personal as you went about what you did so well branded me for life, Maggie. More about that later. In July of 1960, I left Chicago and moved to New York City to continue to pursue a career in show business. But my success in show business was far from being spectacular, Maggie. Probably the best thing I did in New York City was buy my first quality camera, a 35mm single-lens reflex. From here on, it's going to be broad strokes, Maggie, so hold on. In 1962, I moved to Carmel by the Sea, California, and providentially had an opportunity to study with the icon of nature photography, Ansel Adams. I sadly discovered that making nature photographs as a 25-year-old, even if you are a former student of Ansel Adams, did not keep one in tacos and beans, or make that fish and chips, or whatever the equivalent is in Australia. To upgrade my income, I found a job as a writer-photographer on a small daily newspaper in Washington, Iowa. The day I started work was the day John F. Kennedy was assassinated, November 22nd, 1963. I stayed at the Evening Journal for 2 years, learning my craft with up-close and personal small-town journalism. That job led to a position on one of the best photojournalism newspapers in the nation, the Dubuque Telegraph-Herald in Dubuque, Iowa. It was here, Maggie, that my national reputation as a photojournalist, specializing in the picture story, was birthed. In 1968, I was in Memphis, Tennessee, the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated. I had an exclusive interview with Robert Bobby Kennedy the day before he was assassinated, and I was assigned to cover the infamous 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago. We'll start with the last first, Maggie. I think Gwen has a picture on screen of me imploring with abject humility a young National Guardsman, please note that he did have a gun, to allow me to cross the police line. The photograph was taken in Grant Park between Michigan Avenue and Lakeshore Drive during the Democratic Convention. Shortly after this photograph was made, I was tear-gassed while making photos of beat poet Allen Ginsberg and an hour later had the dubious honor of being beaten up within the same hour by the Chicago police and the Hippie Yippie Coalition. Isn't photojournalism grand? Note, Maggie, the Nikon camera with the 85mm lens hanging between the Leica and the Nikon with a telephoto lens. It saved my head from a policeman's baton, but did not fare too well itself. I still have it as a reminder of one of my red badge of courage moments in photojournalism. Maggie, my first national story was the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King in 1968. The photographs you're looking at were taken at a small funeral home in the black section of Memphis the morning after his death. My newspaper chartered a plane for me, and I was the first outside journalist to Memphis, arriving 2 hours after the King assassination. With a nifty bit of in-depth investigative reporting, I was at the crack of dawn the only photographer on scene for this exclusive story, the people of Memphis viewing Dr. King's body at this modest funeral home. For the King assassination story, I was awarded the National Press Photographers Award and the World Press Association Award. 2 months later to the day, I had the dubious honor of having an exclusive interview with Bobby Kennedy in Davenport, Iowa, his last campaign stop prior to his triumphal arrival in California and his untimely assassination in Los Angeles. I've always liked what was probably the last portrait personality photograph made of Bobby. As you'll note, the photograph is in stark contrast to the affable candidate in the streets, and yet I think this image was more true to the man. My photo essays of Bobby's last campaign day was awarded the National Press Photographers Award, plus the Kennedy story, King story, and my coverage of the Democratic Convention were instrumental in me being named Photojournalist of the Year in the state of Iowa. The unexpected and tragic death of my third daughter, Rachel, at 4 months of age, necessitated a move from Dubuque, Iowa. I relocated to Florida. Cox Newspapers had just bought the Palm Beach Post, so with portfolio in hand, I met with executive editor of the Palm Beach Post, Gregory Favre. He took one look at my portfolio and hired me on the spot. He made me the paper's special assignment photojournalist, answerable only to him. As an Iowa farm boy, I had observed and closely identified with the agrarian efforts of the migrants in the nearby Everglades. Needless to say, Maggie, their lifestyle was a dramatic contrast to the quote-unquote beautiful people of the Palm Beaches. To make a long story short, Favre accepted my story idea of covering the migrant stream, gave me carte blanche to do an 8-part series which we later entitled Migration to Misery. Maggie, this story is the highlight of my photojournalism career. In the 2 months I spent covering the migrant stream, I found the people to be proud and diligent to the task at hand, and Maggie, that task was hard. In the 8-part series, close to 50 of my photographs were published. Unbeknownst to me, 24 of those images were submitted by the Palm Beach Post editors to the Pulitzer Commission. Bottom line, I was awarded a Pulitzer Prize in photojournalism in 1970. It was the first Pulitzer Prize awarded for an essay. The same year I was awarded the first annual Robert F. Kennedy Journalist Award, also for Migration to Misery, and was Florida Photojournalist of the Year. I reluctantly left the Post and accepted a Kennedy Foundation grant to do the quintessential book on Native Americans with Dr. Robert Coles, a psychologist at Harvard University. That book never happened. Maggie, for the past 20-plus years, I've had my own corporate communications company, Concept Associates, headquartered in Arizona with a national and international client base. 3 years ago, my wife and I closed the company and relocated to our forest home in the Appalachian foothills. Visually, I've come full circle, for I daily rejoice in a return to my Ansel Adams days of making nature photographs. Bottom line, Maggie, when I Googled you up, I rejoiced in finding you. I rejoiced in viewing the online presentation of your Into the Light retrospective, and I was literally dumbfounded. Maggie, since I've not seen your work for over 48 years, I had never connected the dots on how your photographic style of shooting had branded me for life. Your style with available light photography and subject matter are undeniably fundamental to my style as a photojournalist. And for that, dear lady, I can never thank you enough. So Maggie, have a great show. And please know down deep inside that Dallas Kinney respects, admires, and loves you immensely. Later, Maggie. Later. Blessings.